What if I told you that while the entire Western world has been throwing everything they have at one nation, sanctions, isolation, military pressure, propaganda wars, that nation has not only survived but grown stronger? What if the very strategies designed to bring Russia to its knees have instead revealed why it might be the one country the West simply cannot defeat? Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to discover isn't just another geopolitical analysis. This is about understanding power in its rawest form, not the kind that makes headlines, but the kind that shapes history. This is about uncovering the hidden strengths that make Russia fundamentally different from every other nation the West has successfully pressured, isolated, or controlled. Don't scroll away, don't let distractions pull you from this moment, because what you're about to learn will change how you understand not just international relations, but how real power operates in our world. Stay with me until the very end, because the final revelation about Russia's ultimate strength will shatter everything you thought you knew about global dominance. The geography that cannot be conquered, the first hidden strength that makes Russia unconquerable, lies literally beneath your feet: geography. But this isn't just about size, though Russia's 17 million square kilometers do matter. This is about strategic depth, resource distribution, and natural barriers that have frustrated invaders for centuries. Think about this for a moment and really let it sink in, because this principle applies to any competitive environment you might face. When you control vast territories with multiple climate zones, diverse ecosystems, and scattered population centers, you become almost impossible to pressure effectively. There's always somewhere to retreat, always alternative routes, always backup plans. Russia stretches across 11 time zones. When sanctions hit one region, resources can be redirected through another. When pressure builds on western borders, development shifts east. When sea routes are blocked, land corridors open up. This isn't just geography, it's strategic resilience built into the very fabric of the nation. But here's what makes Russian geography truly unique in the modern world. It's not just big, it's self-contained. Unlike countries that depend on global supply chains, international shipping routes, or foreign resources for survival, Russia possesses within its borders virtually everything a modern civilization needs: oil and natural gas that can power the world, minerals and metals essential for technology, agricultural land that can feed hundreds of millions, freshwater resources that much of the world lacks. When you have internal resource security at this level, external pressure becomes manageable rather than existential. The psychological impact of this geographic advantage cannot be overstated. Russian leadership can make long-term decisions without fear of resource cutoffs. They can absorb short-term economic pain because they know the fundamentals of survival are secure. This creates a confidence that translates into policy consistency and strategic patience. Western strategists, accustomed to dealing with countries dependent on global systems, consistently underestimate what it means to face an opponent with genuine resource independence. Every sanction package is designed around the assumption that cutting access to international markets will create unbearable pressure. But when your target can produce internally what others must import, this assumption becomes a fatal miscalculation. Russia's geographic advantages also extend to defense. The sheer distances involved make military pressure incredibly costly and logistically complex. The harsh climate creates additional barriers for any external force. The multiple borders provide diplomatic options and alternative relationships that can't be easily severed. This geographic foundation creates what military strategists call strategic depth, the ability to absorb initial attacks while preparing counter-response. It's the difference between a boxer who can take punches and keep fighting versus one who goes down from the first solid hit. Russia has proven it can take punches, economic, diplomatic, military, and keep moving forward. Resource independence, the ultimate strategic weapon. While other nations have built their prosperity on global integration and supply chain efficiency, Russia has maintained something far more valuable in times of conflict: complete resource independence. This isn't just an economic advantage, it's a strategic weapon that makes traditional pressure tactics obsolete. Let me put this in perspective for you. When sanctions hit most countries, they create immediate shortages, price spikes, and political pressure from populations feeling economic pain. Leaders face a choice: comply with external demands or watch their societies suffer. But Russia operates under fundamentally different circumstances. Energy independence isn't just about having oil and gas, it's about controlling the energy that other nations need. Russia doesn't just power itself, it powers much of Europe, Asia, and increasingly other regions seeking alternatives to Western-controlled energy systems. This creates reverse leverage, where sanctions on Russia often hurt the sanctioning countries more than the target. Agricultural self-sufficiency has become another hidden strength that most analysts underestimate. Russia is one of the world's largest grain exporters, feeding not just its own population, but much of the developing world. When global food insecurity rises, often as an indirect result of conflicts and sanctions, Russia's agricultural exports become more valuable, not less. Mineral wealth provides the foundation for technological independence. Rare earth elements, precious metals, industrial minerals, Russia has them all. While other countries depend on complex international supply chains for the materials needed in modern technology, Russia can develop and produce domestically. But here's where it gets really interesting from a strategic standpoint. Russia has used sanctions pressure as an opportunity to accelerate domestic development in areas where they previously relied on import. What was meant to weaken them has forced innovation, self-reliance, and technological advancement. Consider the psychological dimension of resource independence. When your population sees that basic needs, food, energy, security, are met regardless of external pressure, social cohesion strengthens rather than weakens. People rally around leadership that demonstrates the ability to provide stability during external attack. This resource independence also creates diplomatic leverage that conventional analysis often misses. Countries facing their own resource insecurities, and there are many, begin to see Russia not as an isolated pariah, but as a potential partner offering what they desperately need. The strategic implications extend beyond immediate survival. Resource independence enables long-term planning and investment in capabilities that countries dependent on global systems simply cannot achieve. When you don't have to worry about external resource cutoffs, you can focus on building strength rather than managing vulnerability. Western economic warfare assumes that global integration creates insurmountable dependence, but Russia has proven that resource independence, even if it comes with some efficiency costs, provides strategic advantages that can outweigh those costs when external pressure intensifies. The nuclear shield that changes everything, perhaps the most uncomfortable truth about why Russia cannot be defeated conventionally, is its nuclear arsenal. Not just the weapons themselves, but the strategic doctrine and psychological framework that surrounds them. This isn't just about deterrence, it's about fundamentally changing the rules of international conflict. Russia possesses the world's largest nuclear arsenal with advanced delivery systems that can reach any target globally. But numbers alone don't tell the story. What makes Russian nuclear capability truly unique is the demonstrated willingness to integrate nuclear considerations into broader strategic thinking. Unlike other nuclear powers that treat nuclear weapons as weapons of last resort, Russia has developed what analysts call escalate to de-escalate doctrine. This means they're willing to introduce nuclear considerations earlier in conflicts to prevent conventional escalation that might lead to existential threats. Think about what this means in practical terms. Any direct military confrontation with Russia carries the risk of nuclear escalation. This doesn't mean Russia is reckless. It means they've created a framework where their conventional weaknesses are protected by nuclear strengths. The psychological impact on Western decision-makers cannot be overstated. Military options that might be considered against other adversaries become unthinkable when nuclear escalation is a realistic possibility. This creates a strategic umbrella under which Russia can operate with reduced fear of direct military pressure. But the nuclear dimension goes beyond weapons to nuclear technology and expertise. Russia leads the world in nuclear power plant construction, nuclear fuel production, and nuclear technology. This civilian nuclear capability creates economic relationships, and technological dependencies that are difficult to sever through sanctions. Countries investing in Russian nuclear technology are making 50-year commitments. Nuclear power plants require ongoing fuel supplies, maintenance, and technical support. These relationships create bonds that survive political tensions and provide Russia with long-term influence and revenue streams. The space dimension of nuclear technology also provides strategic advantages. Russian space capabilities, rocket technology, and satellite systems all benefit from the same technological base that supports nuclear weapons. This creates civilian applications that are harder to sanction while maintaining military relevance. Nuclear capability also provides what strategists call extended deterrence for allies and partners. Countries working closely with Russia gain some protection from the nuclear umbrella, making them more willing to resist Western pressure and maintain independent policy. Perhaps most importantly, nuclear weapons provide time. In a conventional conflict, superior forces can achieve rapid victories that create irreversible facts on the ground. Nuclear weapons ensure that any conflict involving Russia will be prolonged, allowing time for diplomacy, alliance building, and strategic adaptation. The nuclear dimension forces Western strategists to think in terms of management rather than victory. The goal becomes containing and constraining rather than defeating and replacing. This fundamentally different strategic framework plays to Russian strengths while limiting Western options. Russian military thinking has evolved around a fundamental reality that Western military doctrine often ignores. Russia cannot afford to lose a single major conflict. This existential imperative has created military capabilities and doctrines specifically designed for scenarios where conventional military disadvantages must be overcome through superior strategy, determination, and willingness to escalate. Unlike Western militaries that optimize for power projection and intervention in distant conflicts, Russian forces are designed for homeland defense and regional deterrence. This creates capabilities that are less impressive in overseas operations, but devastatingly effective in scenarios where Russian core interests are threatened. Russian military doctrine emphasizes mass, persistence, and escalation control rather than technological superiority and surgical precision. This approach assumes that conflicts involving Russian vital interests will be prolonged, intense, and require mobilization of national resources rather than professional military forces alone. The concept of deep battle that emerged from Soviet military theory remains central to Russian strategic thinking. This involves simultaneous engagement across multiple domains: land, air, sea, space, cyber, information, to create cumulative effects that overwhelm enemy decision-making and response capabilities. Russian military-industrial complex maintains production capabilities that can rapidly expand during conflicts. Unlike Western systems optimized for peacetime efficiency, Russian defense production is designed to surge quickly when national survival is at stake. This creates strategic depth in military capability that matches geographic strategic depth. Asymmetric capabilities receive special emphasis in Russian military development. Hypersonic weapons, electronic warfare systems, cyber capabilities, and space weapons are all designed to neutralize Western technological advantages by attacking vulnerabilities rather than matching strengths directly. The reserve system and civil defense preparations assume that major conflicts will require total societal mobilization. This creates military potential that goes far beyond active duty forces to include trained reserves, civilian infrastructure, and population prepared for wartime conditions. Nuclear integration into conventional military planning ensures that Russian forces always operate with escalation options that can change conflict dynamics when conventional outcomes become unfavorable. This creates strategic flexibility that conventional military analysis often fails to account for. Regional force positioning prioritizes defense of approaches to Russian heartland rather than global power projection. This concentrated defensive posture creates local superiority in regions where Russian vital interests are most directly threatened. Military doctrine also emphasizes psychological and information warfare as integral components of military operation. Russian forces trained to fight in environments where information, morale, and political will are as important as firepower and technology. Economic adaptation and strategic patience. Perhaps the most surprising aspect of Russian resilience has been the speed and effectiveness of economic adaptation to unprecedented sanctions pressure. Rather than causing collapse, sanctions have accelerated economic diversification, technological development, and alternative relationship building that may leave Russia stronger in the long term. Import substitution programs that had been developing slowly for years received massive acceleration when sanctions cut access to Western products and technology. This forced innovation and domestic development that otherwise might have taken decades to achieve. Financial system adaptation has been particularly impressive. Cut off from SWIFT and Western banking systems, Russia developed alternative payment systems, expanded use of national currencies in trade, and created financial infrastructure that operates independently of Western control. Energy market diversification has shifted Russian exports from predominantly European customers to Asian, African, and Latin American markets. This not only maintains revenue, but creates new relationships that are less vulnerable to Western political pressure. Agricultural development has transformed Russia from a grain importer to one of the world's largest exporters. Sanctions on food imports provided protection for domestic agriculture that enabled rapid expansion and technological modernization. Technology sector development has accelerated as Russian companies were forced to replace Western software, hardware, and technical services. This created domestic technology capabilities that provide both economic opportunities and strategic independence. Trade relationship diversification has expanded Russian economic partnerships with countries representing the majority of global population and economic growth. These relationships often involve longer-term commitments and more balanced partnerships than previous Western-dominated trade patterns. Currency policy innovations have reduced dependence on dollar-denominated transactions, while increasing use of rubles, yuan, and other alternative currencies. This creates resilience against financial warfare while building alternative monetary systems. Industrial policy coordination has aligned economic development with strategic priorities in ways that market-driven economies find difficult to achieve. This enables rapid resource allocation and development focus when national priorities require economic support. The psychological dimension of economic adaptation has created confidence in Russian economic sovereignty that translates into political support for independent policy. When people see their country successfully adapting to external pressure, it validates leadership decisions to maintain strategic independence. Strategic patience in economic policy allows Russia to absorb short-term costs for long-term advantages. Unlike democratic governments facing regular elections, Russian leadership can implement policies that may be painful initially but provide strategic benefits over time. Information warfare and narrative control. One of Russia's most sophisticated and underestimated capabilities is its approach to information warfare and narrative control. This isn't just about propaganda or disinformation, it's about understanding how information shapes reality in ways that create strategic advantages, independent of military or economic power. Russian information strategy operates on the principle that controlling narratives often matters more than controlling territory. By shaping how events are interpreted and understood, Russia can achieve political objectives that would be impossible through conventional means alone. The approach emphasizes authentic voices and grassroots networks rather than official government communications. This creates credibility and reach that government-sponsored messaging cannot achieve, especially in an era where audiences are skeptical of official sources. Alternative media platforms and independent journalists receive support to develop content that challenges Western narratives without appearing to be directly controlled by Russian government. This creates information diversity that provides audiences with alternatives to mainstream Western media perspectives. Social media operations focus on amplifying existing divisions and contradictions within Western societies rather than creating artificial conflict. This approach requires deep understanding of target societies and surgical precision in messaging, timing, and targeting. Cultural products, films, books, music, art carry Russian perspectives and values into global markets where they compete with Western cultural export. This soft power approach builds long-term influence and attractiveness that survives political tensions. Academic and intellectual networks develop Russian perspectives on international relations, economics, technology, and philosophy that provide alternatives to Western academic dominance. This creates intellectual infrastructure for alternative worldviews. Language and translation services make Russian media and information available in dozens of languages, reaching audiences that Western media often neglects or underserved. This creates direct relationships with global audiences without Western intermediaries. Historical narratives receive special attention, offering alternative interpretations of key events that challenge Western historical assumptions. This creates competing versions of reality that resonate with populations who have experienced Western interventions differently. Technological platforms and capabilities ensure that Russian information can reach global audiences even when Western platforms attempt censorship or restriction. This technological independence prevents information isolation during political conflicts. The strategic objective isn't just to promote Russian positions, but to create information environments where Western narrative dominance is challenged and alternative perspectives can flourish. This multipolar information landscape serves Russian strategic interests by preventing Western monopoly on truth definition. The alliance system that challenges Western hegemony. Russia has systematically built alliance relationships and partnerships that create alternatives to Western-dominated international systems. This isn't just about military alliances, it's about creating parallel institutions, economic relationships, and diplomatic frameworks that provide options independent of Western approval. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization has evolved from a regional security arrangement into a comprehensive cooperation framework that includes major powers like China and India alongside Central Asian nations. This creates an alternative institutional structure for regional governance and security cooperation. BRICS expansion has transformed what began as an economic discussion forum into a potential alternative to Western-dominated global institutions. The addition of new members and development of alternative financial mechanisms creates practical alternatives to World Bank and IMF dominance. Eurasian Economic Union provides framework for economic integration across former Soviet space that creates trade relationships and regulatory coordination independent of European Union influence. This builds economic sovereignty while maintaining regional integration benefit. Bilateral strategic partnerships with major powers like China, India, and Iran create mutual support relationships that provide diplomatic protection and economic opportunities outside Western systems. These partnerships are based on mutual benefit rather than ideological alignment. Regional security arrangements in different parts of the world provide Russia with influence and presence that complicates Western strategic planning. From Africa to Latin America to Asia, Russian security relationships create alternative options for countries seeking independence from Western military dominance. Technology partnerships and knowledge-sharing agreements create innovation networks that don't depend on Western technology or academic institutions. This builds collective technological sovereignty while sharing development costs and risk. Energy partnerships and infrastructure projects create long-term economic relationships that survive political tensions. Pipeline agreements, nuclear power plant construction, and resource development create mutual dependencies that provide stability during conflict. Cultural and educational exchanges build people-to-people relationships that create lasting foundations for political cooperation. These relationships often survive government changes and political tensions to provide continuity in bilateral relations. International organization alternatives provide platforms for cooperation and coordination outside Western institutional control. From development banks to security arrangements
to trade agreements. These alternatives reduce dependence on Western-dominated institutions. The cumulative effect of these alliance relationships is to create what international relations theorists call a multipolar world order, where no single power or alliance can dominate global decision-making. This serves Russian interests by preventing Western isolation while providing alternatives for other countries seeking independence. Conclusion: the undefeatable reality. What we've discovered today isn't just about Russia, it's about understanding how power really works in our complex, interconnected world. We've seen how geography, resources, nuclear capabilities, cultural resilience, military doctrine, economic adaptation, information warfare, and alliance building combine to create a form of national strength that conventional pressure tactics simply cannot overcome. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. Every attempt to isolate, pressure, or defeat Russia has instead revealed the fundamental weaknesses in Western strategic thinking. From sanctions that accelerate Russian independence to military pressure that strengthens Russian resolve, from information warfare that exposes Western contradictions to alliance building that creates alternatives to Western dominance. But here's the deeper truth that extends far beyond geopolitics. In any competitive environment, whether business, personal relationships, in international affairs, real strength comes not from dominance, but from independence, not from control, but from resilience, not from forcing others to conform, but from creating alternatives that others choose freely. Russia has become undefeatable not because it's perfect, but because it has built systemic resilience across every dimension of national power. It has created redundancy where others have efficiency, independence where others have integration, patience where others demand immediate results. The implications extend throughout our rapidly changing world as global power structures shift and traditional hierarchies are challenged. The lessons from Russia's strategic approach provide insights for nations, organizations, and individuals seeking to build sustainable strength in uncertain times. Thank you for staying with me through this comprehensive analysis of one of the most important strategic realities of our time. In a world full of surface-level commentary and ideological thinking, you've chosen to engage with the deeper patterns that really shape global outcomes. If this analysis opened your eyes to new ways of understanding power, strategy, and resilience in our complex world, subscribe to our channel for more insights that reveal the hidden forces shaping our future. Hit that subscribe button and join a community of strategic thinkers who refuse to accept simple explanations for complex realities. The future belongs not to those who demand compliance, but to those who build alternatives. Not to those who dominate through force, but to those who attract through strength. Not to those who control through dependency, but to those who lead through independence. This is Power Vision, where we don't just analyze events, we decode the strategic patterns that determine which nations, organizations, and individuals will thrive in tomorrow's world. Until next time, keep building your independence, keep developing your resilience, and never underestimate the power of strategic patience in a world that demands instant results.